A top story there, the conflict, the armed conflict between Israel and Gaza continues. We are into week 4 and we're joined by Tal Heinrich, the spokesperson in the Israeli Prime Minister's office from Tel Aviv for this special broadcast. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you, Anil.
Day 27 or week 4 of this conflict. As things stand today, what's the biggest challenge that the Israeli government is facing?
A few challenges here, and I will start with something that is a bit overlooked, I think, because, as you said, we are 27 days after Hamas death squads massacred through our communities here in Israel and threatened Israel's sovereign territory as they did, mutilated, raped their way through our communities, and still so many people, we're talking about dozens of Israelis, are unaccounted for. That means that their families, they don't know if they're being held hostage in Gaza with 240 other Israelis, or that they died, they were killed, and their bodies are in Gaza, but we have no access to them, or that their bodies are in fact here, but they are beyond recognition. So can you imagine, Anil, the torture of mind and soul to these families who have no idea what happened to their loved ones? So that is one challenge. Of course, the second challenge is to accomplish our goal. We're doing it, and it will take time. We're operating in Gaza. We expanded the ground operation, as we said we would, with the aim of dismantling the Hamas terrorist regime. And it is a very difficult mission because, as you know, Hamas has embedded itself inside the civilian population, underneath hospitals. They put command centers under hospitals and schools and youth centers and clinics and mosques and whatnot. So we are acting in a very surgical way in Gaza right now to achieve this mission and also to bring our sons and daughters back home.
Okay, the US President, Joe Biden has called for a humanitarian pause. Will Israel in the first place agree to this appeal?
You see, we have agreed. We said we will not prevent the transfer of humanitarian aid from the Rafah border crossing, which connects Egypt and the Gaza Strip, inside Gaza. And we're talking about medical supplies, food, and water. We want this humanitarian aid to reach the civilian population in Gaza. And in fact, dozens of trucks have entered so far, and many more will enter because we want the population in Gaza. We don't want them to suffer. We wanted them. We called on them to evacuate from the north, where the heavy fighting is taking place, where Hamas is deep grounded and under the ground over there. And we called on them to evacuate to the southwest, to these safer havens where humanitarian aid is awaiting. But if you're talking in terms of a ceasefire, then no, a ceasefire is not negotiable, because we had a ceasefire on October 6th. And then the day after, Hamas broke it and massacred us. So we will have a ceasefire again only after we achieve these goals of bringing back our sons and daughters and, of course, dismantling the Hamas terrorist regime.
Tal, do you see any circumstances, arising short of wiping out Hamas, that could lead to, an early end to this armed fight that is on? An
early end? A surrender of Hamas? Well, I think it's very premature to tell. We hope that international pressure combined with military pressure will help us achieve our goal, because we have decided as a nation that we can no longer live next to this existential threat, this terror base called Gaza, under the Hamas rule. It's simply impossible, because I don't know if you've seen that, but a top Hamas leader, one of their political leaders, just gave an interview a few days ago to a Lebanese channel, and he said that they will commit the October 7th massacre again and again, for a second time and a third time and a fourth time if they could. And we take his words at face value. That's exactly what they would do. That's why we're not taking any chances here.
Okay, Tal, do you think that Hamas would be in a position, especially to have a pitch battle, especially with the IDF?
To have again? Say,
I said, will Hamas be in a position, especially to get into a pitch battle with the IDF? Or, is it something that they are not...
You see, these are questions that our military leadership is dealing with. I cannot really expand on anything operational happening on the ground. Number of forces, number of terrorists that we have to take down and so on. But and I cannot even expand about military strategy moving ahead from
perfectly understood, Tal. But what is Israel's plan, especially when it comes to rescuing the Israeli as well as the foreign hostages?
So obviously, the fact that there are 240 at least hostages being held there is making the operation a very, very complex mission. And these are things that are being discussed in the highest levels in the Israeli military and the government. We believe that the ground operation is helping us to achieve both of our goals of dismantling Hamas and bringing back our hostages home. So we know that it will take time. We said it will take time. This is just the beginning. We have patience, we have the resilience, and we're acting as a united nation right now. You should see what's happening on the home front, and not only on the front lines. It's a national effort because you see, Anel, everyone in this country, everyone in Israel has been affected by that. Everyone knows someone who's fighting. Everyone knows someone who was killed or was abducted or was injured. We have 5,400 injuries. And keep in mind that it's not that just the October 7th massacre happened and then Israel launched a counteroffensive. We have 8,500 rockets that have been fired at Israeli territory over this period. That is a reality that we will no longer tolerate.
Okay. Tal, looking at this particular conflict that's taking place, are you apprehensive in the first place of, this particular conflict, growing wider, especially in the region?
Sure, we don't want to see this conflict expanding into a full-fledged war on combined fronts. Our adversaries in the region, if it's Hezbollah, as you know, or the Houthis in Yemen, all of them are supported by Hamas. All of them, in fact, are Iranian proxies, just like Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And they try to challenge us time and again. We've had back and forth in the north with Hezbollah, and we're acting to deter in the north and to dismantle in the south these Iranian proxies. But we hope that these Iranian proxies do not provide us an attack on a casus belli scale that we will have to retaliate. But if they would, we will act very, very decisively. We will act very decisively, and it will be disastrous for the people of Lebanon. And we know that Hezbollah doesn't care much about them, just like Hamas doesn't care about the Palestinian civilians. Israel does not want to hurt any civilians. We don't want any civilian population to suffer. But you see, we will have to defend ourselves, and we will do whatever it takes.
Also with regards to the way, this particular fight is going on, do you somewhere feel, as I asked you before, I'm just turning the question upside down, how long do you think, we are into week 4, how long do you think can the Hamas hold up, or do they have the firepower to hold themselves together for much longer?
We are a strong and resilient nation. And you are familiar with the history of Israel, and you're familiar with the history of the Jewish people. You know how resilient we are. And we will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. That is what the Prime Minister says. And I think the world understands it, that just like was the case with the ISIS Caliphate, for example, in Syria and Iraq, it took the international coalition to defeat ISIS, in fact, many months. I cannot speculate here how long it will take us to achieve our goal of eliminating the Hamas regime in Gaza, but I can tell you that we are looking at the model of the international coalition to defeat ISIS that worked very well. And this is what we're following. And we're also consulting with international partners in that respect.
Okay, Tal,
all the patience in the world.
Okay, is Israel, not worried, especially with regards to the action that it takes, in the Gaza Strip? It could possibly also, wrap up or possibly strengthen the anti-Israel sentiment, especially in West Asia and elsewhere in the world. Do you worry that? And how do you plan to tackle that issue?
You see, we believe that everyone in the civilized world that is not ignorant and knows history and knows a thing or two about the region and knows how to tell right from wrong, good from evil, will stand by Israel. And we know that people in Asia, the people in India are standing by our side, because you see, it's not coincidental that this attack has taken place right when Israel was on the brink of achieving a diplomatic breakthrough with Saudi Arabia, an historic peace deal that would have changed the region and would have benefited India as well.
Okay.
You remember just a few weeks ago, months ago, we were talking about this rails and ports corridor that will connect India with the Middle East and Europe through Saudi Arabia and Israel. We want peace. We want a prosperous region. But these terrorists, that is their greatest enemy. Peace is their worst nightmare. But we will have it. We will have it. So we know that the civilized world will stand by us.
Tal, when one takes a look at India, how do you see the role of India, especially the potential that it holds or a pivotal role that it would play, in helping ending this particular war?
So we hope, first, on a personal level, I would like to express gratitude here on behalf of the Israeli people to the support that we have, moral support that we have been receiving from Indian individuals all around the world. It's been very heartwarming, and we know that to tell good from evil, right from wrong, and we really appreciate your standing by Israel. And on the diplomatic level, what we want to see is support to Israel in the United Nations. So far, we're 27 days after Hamas waged war on us, and the UN Security Council hasn't issued even a condemnation of Hamas. So I think moral global leadership is very, very important here, and India sure has that.
Okay, one final word. How do you see this, this Hamas military group that exists? Do you somewhere feel that it's become a state within a state, the way they have gone about, post the October 7th events that have unfolded?
You mean that Hamas is a state inside a state?
True.
Hamas is a terrorist regime. They have their governance bodies and they have a military wing. And we have decided that it can simply be no longer. Not only that they are targeting us, they're also committing a double war crime here because they're hurting us and they're hurting the civilian population in Gaza. They are, our armies will protect us, the civilian population, the Indian army, the Israeli army. This is what normal armies do. But when you're talking about terrorists, they're doing exactly the opposite. They're putting the population in front of them to act as human shields. That is a war crime, and they're committing a double war crime here, so they can be no longer.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We appreciate you joining us this evening on this special broadcast. Week 4, let's hope that we see light at the end of the tunnel, and we hope that things get better. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this evening on this broadcast.
Sure, now.